Jean Craighead George was a prolific children's writer. Her books were very influential, not just in instilling a love of nature in children, but instilling a love of reading.
Newbery Award-winning author Jean Craighead George wrote more than 100 books for children and young adults, including Julie of the Wolves and My Side of the Mountain. She wrote about nature in hopes of inspiring young readers to protect and conserve the beautiful creatures and places that filled the pages of her books. Her father was a biologist and taught Jean and her older twin brothers about plants and animals, especially when exploring the wild surroundings of her family's summer home, the Craighead House, just outside Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania.
They had a dirt road and freedom. There were fields, mountains, a creek literally in the backyard. All of these things provided endless opportunities for children to have fun.
It was really a unique place, really magical place. It became the basis for generations of naturalists. My uncles went on to become grizzly bear biologists. Mom went on to write books about nature and animals. She would tell stories about how the boys would climb down the rain spouts and get out of naps. She would sneak out at night and she would go up on the railroad bridge and in the moonlight and write. They were very romantic. It just seemed to me like the perfect world.
When they drive up here at the beginning of summer, she would race into the house, up to her bedroom, take her shoes off and put them under the bed for the duration of the summer. They had glorious times here.
My favorite thing about Craighead House is actually Jean's writing desk in her room. She wanted to create a writing space that was all her own. So she looked out over this creek and was able to do some of her very first writing. My Side of the Mountain is probably one of Jean's most well-known books. At the Craighead House, we hear story after story of visitor who says that book changed my life or that book set my career path.
I immediately imagined I was Sam Gribley and set about building a log cabin in the woods, and I think it influenced a whole generation of people to explore the wildness of the world, revere nature.
In her Newbery-winning book, young Sam Gribley lives a comfortable life in New York City, but tired of urban living, he runs away to the Catskill Mountains and sets off on an adventure of a lifetime.
In a sense, it's a manual for those of us who are interested in outdoors. I think she tapped into the universal longing for freedom and adventure.
Just the idea of being able to have the guts to step out from the world you know, a world of privilege, and sort of see what you're made of is what that book is all about. I think that that's why the book has sustained the popularity it has sustained over the years.
I think in the way that My Side of the Mountain spoke to the wildness of boys, Julie of the Wolves speaks to wildness of girls.
So she got sent to the Arctic to do a story about wolves for the Reader's Digest, and she fell in love with them. And she wrote a story that she thought was great. But for one reason or another, they had turned down the article. Maybe the Reader's Digest just wasn't ready for it. And she was very upset. And I said, well, Mom, you're a writer. You're really a great writer. Why don't you write a book? And she kind of stopped and she said, I will. And she did. Her journey through writing sort of followed the conservation wildlife movement. Julie of the Wolves was really taking an animal with a bad reputation and showing all of its sides. And I think that really began a whole nother chapter of her writing.
It's pretty evident if you look at the body of Jean's work. The themes throughout are promoting environmental stewardship, an environmental ethic that was nurtured by her entire family.
The natural world was such a part of her writing. The people were almost secondary. You know, they carried the story for the information about the natural world.
One of my favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis, as he was talking about the importance of imaginative literature like Jean's, is that reading about enchanted woods doesn't make you despise real woods. The reading makes real woods a little more enchanted. So I think that Jean's literature really does that, and so I think that that is what's so important about her work.
What she was doing was putting kids in a real place. She wanted them to feel the places that she wrote about in her books the way that she felt when she was here.